There was no escaping my fixation on that beautiful landlady. It wasn't just because she was beautiful that I was drawn to her. There was a reason why I was intrigued by her. I encountered with her by chance, and it led to a story neither of us would have ever expected. My name is Tom Miller, a 60-year-old man. I used to work as a chief carpenter but retired last month. I've only ever worked as a carpenter, completely devoted to my craft. My wife, Alice, who stood by me through it all, passed away 15 years ago. When Alice's disease was found, it had already been quite progressed. Alice chose to forgo aggressive treatment, preferring to live out her remaining days in peace. Shall we spend our family time without all the hustle? I was the one who objected to Alice's decision. I thought it was unfair for her to suffer from illness and leave me behind, especially after she had borne the brunt of my work-focused life. And our daughter, Emily, was only 15 at that time. Emily and I often found it difficult to communicate, but she and Alice were very close. The thought of her leaving our daughter behind like that, just imagining what Alice must have been feeling about it, was too much to bear. I tried my utmost to find a hospital that could cure Alice's disease. I even searched for hospitals outside our county when local options fell short. I worked harder than ever to cover the medical expenses and spent my days off searching for hospitals. I was single-mindedly determined to save Alice. But Alice quietly told me, "You don't have to do all this. Let's just have a nice meal together and maybe go somewhere on our days off. That's what I want. That makes me happy. Just spending more time together like this is enough for me." I was left speechless. After that, for the first time in my life, I took a long vacation. It was to extend my time with Alice, if even by a little. I was lucky to have understanding colleagues who helped adjust my work schedule during the week, so I could go back home earlier. I felt Alice smiled more often after I stopped looking for a hospital. Emily asked Alice to teach her how to cook. "Because Dad's cooking doesn't look that appetizing. I should learn how to cook from you, right?" I realized from her demeanor that she was preparing herself in her own way for the mother's departure. I vividly remember how Alice looked happy for how our daughter was doing her best to get ready for this big transition. Alice lived out her remaining days peacefully, and she took her journey to the skies. I'm grateful that Alice told me, "Please stop looking for hospitals." Halting the search for hospitals allowed me to cherish the time with Alice and our daughter. Thanks to the final moments Alice gave us, both my daughter and I were able to see Alice off with peaceful hearts. Then, I threw myself into work. I think our daughter understood that I was filling the void of Alice's absence with work. She willingly took over the household chores. And finally, I reached retirement. When I had nothing else to do, I didn't know how to spend my day. One day, our daughter Emily suggested a trip as a celebration for the hard work until retirement. Even though I wasn't sure if she'd enjoy going on a trip just with me, Emily seemed enjoying planning the trip. Emily is turning 30 this year. I think she's becoming more and more like Alice when she was young. She has graduated from college and got a job, and she also told me that she even got a new boyfriend. While I was happy that she no longer needed her parents' help, I also felt a sense of loneliness. I wish I could share these feelings with Alice, but I'm sure she's watching over us from above. Feeling reluctant to have Emily spend money on my trip, I told her that I preferred a nearby destination. "Just leave it to me. There's a nice inn in the mountains of the neighboring town. Look forward to it." Emily brought me to a secluded, shabby hot springs inn in the mountains. But calling it shabby might be misleading. It was a charming inn with an old-fashioned atmosphere. Even though I had heard of this inn, it was my first time visiting there because I was always working. We visited on a weekday, so there weren't many guests there. It seemed like we could relax well. When we arrived at the inn, we were greeted by the landlady. She was elegant, and the dress she was wearing suited her perfectly. "Welcome, I'm glad you could make it." And this landlady, her face, or rather her atmosphere, was somewhat similar to Alice's, and it startled me. I looked at Emily in panic, and it seemed like she was frozen as well. I thought she might be thinking the same thing. Seeing us in shock, the landlady tilted her head in confusion. "Is everything okay?" At her words, Emily seemed to snap back to reality. "And no, nothing. Your inn is lovely, isn't it, Dad?" "Oh, yay." After that, we had a relaxing stay at this hot spring inn. It was well kept, and the food was delicious. The service of the employees was great, and the space was very comfortable. However, it seems that the weather is going to deteriorate tonight, and it will rain heavily. The rain is already starting to fall. The outdoor hot tub here isn't roofed, so it was closed for the day. I was looking forward to soaking in the outdoor hot tub, but it was off the table this time. Still, the indoor tub was amazing, so let's count it as a win. After we finished our meals and baths, we were lounging in our room when we heard some commotion. Emily and I got curious, so we decided to follow the noise. Apparently, there was a leak in a room they were using as a storage. The landlady noticed us and came our way looking apologetic. "I'm sorry for the disturbance." "What happened?" She pointed to a corner of the ceiling in the room. "It was damp from the rain." "There's a leak. We've done regular inspections as this is an old building, but rest assured, your rooms are fine. Please, go back and get some rest in your room." Despite her assurances, I found myself looking up at the ceiling, concerned. That's when Emily turned to me and said, "Dad, why don't you offer to help?" "Huh?" I replied, surprised. I was just about to offer my assistance. Talk about good timing. The landlady tried to stop us, but Emily replied with a chuckle, "My dad used to be a carpenter. He's good at fixing these sorts of things, and he seems pretty worried about it. That's my girl. She knows her father well." With this happening, there's no way I could go back to our room to rest. Like my daughter says, I'm good at this kind of thing, and after seeing this, I can't help but worry. "May I help you?" After a few protests, the lady reluctantly agreed to let us help. According to her, the male staff, who would usually handle physically demanding work, had already gone home, leaving only the cooks and the housekeepers. She seemed apologetic, but for me, it felt almost satisfying to be able to be of use. Maybe I'm more suited to being active than to living a leisurely retirement life. The landlady and I spent until midnight repairing the ceiling. Without a man's hand, it becomes troublesome at times like these. My husband used to handle these kind of things, but he passed away 10 years ago. Since then, we've been depending on professionals and other male staff for physical tasks. We both have our share of loneliness, don't we? I found myself murmuring, thinking of my late wife, Alice, upon hearing about her late husband. I lost my wife too, you know. It was 15 years ago, but there are still some nights when her absence hit me hard, especially since our daughter moved out. I feel the same way. My son's married, and he's been working at this inn for a long time. In fact, he and his wife are about to take over the management. It is relieving, but at the same time, it's lonely. I've been burying my loneliness in work since my husband's passing. Now, I wonder what I'll do alone. My kids have moved out too, and while I'm proud of them, there's a part of me that feels like my role has ended. If my husband was still here, we could have rejoiced at our children's growth together. The more we talked, the more I realized how similar our situations were. Both of us had lost our spouses and immersed ourselves in work. But as we aged, our children left home and we retired. Now, Imagining our future alone filled us with loneliness and anxiety. But there was no one to share these feelings with. And we didn't want to worry our children. We talked about our spouses, our children, and many other things while waiting for the repairs to be completed. Each time the landlady showed her smiling face or looked lonely, I was reminded of my late Alice. If you looked closely, they didn't look alike actually. But there was something similar in their gentle aura, their choice of words, their timing of laughter. Seeing me lost in thought, the landlady said, "If I were to fall in love again, I'd want someone like you, Mr. Miller." I was taken aback and quickly responded, "Me? This old, worn-out guy like me? You're beautiful, and you could find someone much better." No, I'm getting on in years too. I'd like someone who can understand my loneliness." I agreed with her words. After that she asked me, "Will you spend another night at this inn if possible?" She seemed to think I should at least rest after helping her out so much. "Please, could you stay one more night?" When the beautiful landlady, who reminded me of Alice, pleaded with me like that, I ended up agreeing. Emily was also delighted by the landlady's offer, and we decided to stay another night. The next day was sunny, as if the heavy rain from the day before had never happened. I enjoyed sightseeing with my daughter, and we thoroughly enjoyed the inn's hot spring and food. But even then, I would occasionally find myself reflecting. The innkeeper, talking about if I were to fall in love again, I'd like someone like Mr. Miller. That night, as it was our last day of the trip, Emily and I had some drinks. I drank with her thinking how happy it is to do that with a daughter, but it seemed like we had too many of it. Just as we were getting pretty drunk, Emily murmured, "The landlady. She reminds me of Mom, doesn't she?" It seemed that Emily was getting sleepy from the alcohol, and she rubbed her eyes. "You can go to bed first." Maybe I will. But Dad, are you okay going back like this? Aren't you concerned about the landlady? I had told Emily about my conversation with the landlady the day before. "You two seem to be in similar situations. It's a coincidence that you met, but finding someone who can share your loneliness and feelings, that's rare, isn't it?" Emily fell asleep as soon as she said such a thing. I crawled into bed thinking about what Emily had said, but I couldn't fall asleep easily. When I woke up the next day, Emily was gone. I thought she might have gone to the bathroom, but when I saw that her luggage was gone, I panicked and opened my phone to call her. But I didn't need to call. There was already a message from Emily. "I'll head home by taxi and train. I saw the landlady early this morning. Dad, maybe you can try your luck. People are said to live for 100 years nowadays. It'd be lonely to live it alone from now on. If there's someone by your side, I'll feel relieved." It seemed like she had noticed my feelings for the landlady. More than that, the words that she spoke with the landlady prompted me to rush to see her. My daughter mentioned that she had a conversation with you. I hope she didn't say anything rude." The landlady laughed awkwardly and shook her head. "Not at all. She simply told me you seemed to be concerned about me." I scratched my head in embarrassment. "Is that so?" I hesitated about whether or not to express my true feelings. The landlady, I heard, was 55 but looked youthful and beautiful. I was a typical 60-year-old. Being a physical worker, my body might be sturdier than others of my age, but that's about it. It didn't seem to match. That thought crossed my mind. "Your daughter told me, my dad is lonely even though he doesn't show it much. If there's someone by his side, I'm sure the rest of his life would be more enjoyable." I could tell my daughter was trying to give me a push. If Emily is supporting me, I felt like I could take a step forward. I thought I was going to spend my old age alone, with loneliness and fear, but if there's someone I can share and overcome that loneliness and fear, I'd like to be with them. After talking with you yesterday, I thought you could be that person. I feel the same way. The landlady's delicate hand overlapped with mine. I gripped her hand tightly. We both have families to take care of, so let's be friends for now and see where our relationship leads us. Yes, we'll start from that. That's how our friendship started. Since she lived in a neighboring town and I was retired already, I could see her frequently. After a while, the landlady retired from being an innkeeper and left the hot spring inn to her son and daughter-in-law. Now, I call her by her first name, Emma. We couldn't put a break on our growing love and weren't satisfied with just being friends. We talked to each other's children and started dating. We were 60 and 55 years old. Our relationship was slow and steady. Then, on her 56th birthday, I suggested that we live together. I also wanted to do that. I got such a response from her, so we started living together. Just having Emma in my house made my life brighten up instantly. But honestly, at this age, I thought it was okay not to marry her. But the one who gave me a push was my daughter, Emily. It's exactly because of your age. If something happens to you, if you're married, there are things you can leave behind, right? And do you want only me to be by your side at your last moment? Hearing that, I made up my mind. I realized that was indeed the case. We've both experienced a heartbreaking parting with our first partners. And there's no doubt that because I was her husband and a part of her family, I was able to be there for Alice in her last moments. If the last day comes, I want Emma to be there by my side. And also, I want to be the one by Emma's side when her time comes. After many discussions with our family and Emma, we decided to get married. Now, we live together. Our children have given their blessings. We regularly gather as a family for dinner, with my daughter Emily and Emma's son and his wife. Our family has grown, making our life more vibrant than we could have ever imagined. In our living room, we have photos of my late wife Alice and Emma's late husband. For both of us, they are irreplaceable. And our feelings for them will never change. We both want to cherish such emotions of one another and spend each day with care and kindness. I hope you enjoyed our story. Your subscription would really motivate us to continue producing content. See you in the next video. She was standing in the kitchen, dressed in a soft pink apron with frills. Her long hair, which usually fell to her shoulders, swiftly gathered and pinned up high. I was watching her from behind. My name is Kenneth. Hey, Shane, where did you put that? I was feeling a bit under the weather since the day before, and was looking for my prescription record book before heading to the doctor's, rummaging through the drawers. It wasn't anything serious, but after crossing 60, even a slight indisposition makes you anxious. So I was looking for the prescription record, but couldn't find it and unintentionally called out for my wife, Jane. And then, midway, it struck me. Jane is no longer here. My wife had passed away a year ago. As I made a wry smile, wondering if I was losing my mind, our pet cat Nettie looked up at me curiously from my feet. Nettie, you're back. When I spoke to her, Nettie responded with a meow. We did not have children. Perhaps for that reason, Jane doted on Nettie as if she was our own child. Nettie was originally a stray cat, and we found her entangled in the bird net at our garbage collection point. Perhaps because of her stray past, Nettie loved to go outdoors. So even after we took her in, we let her roam freely. Where did Mama keep the prescription record book? Nettie ignored me, placing her left front paw on my right foot. I closed the drawer I was looking in and opened the one below it. The prescription record was not there either. Instead, there were travel brochures. Next time, take me with you. You've retired now, and you have some free time. Take me with you. Jane asked me to take her to a quaint, rustic hot spring inn, saying that it had beautiful pink moss nearby and she would love to visit it in May when the flowers would be in full bloom. "Okay, I got it. I'll take you," I answered, and she clapped her hands in joy. But just when we were about to go, last April, Jane suddenly collapsed due to a subarachnoid hemorrhage and passed away 10 days later in the hospital. She was 58. As I was lost in thought, spreading out the travel brochure on the dining table, Nettie jumped onto the table and lay down on the brochure. Nettie's trying to look at that." Nettie, still laying down, started purring. "He's about 10 years old. Mid-50s and human years. I hope you live a long life." Nettie rolled onto her back to show me her belly. Half a month after the first anniversary of Jane's death, I planned a 2-night, 3-day trip to the hot spring inn Jane had always wanted to go to. I called the travel agency in the brochure, and they arranged the inn and round-trip train tickets. While I would be away, I decided to hire a housekeeper, but specifically, a pet sitter for Nettie. I searched online and found a pet sitter who ran her business not too far from my home. As I would be giving my house keys to a stranger, it was necessary to meet her beforehand. "Hello, I'm Nova Garcia, the pet sitter." A few days after I made the call, a woman with shoulder-length black hair came flying in on a bicycle with a basket in front. She was huffing and puffing, her cheeks dimpling as she smiled at me at the entrance. She looked about 55 or 56. As I ushered her into the living room and we exchanged greetings, there was a scratching sound at the living room door. The door opened slightly, and Nettie walked in. "This is the one. It would be great if you could close the door when she opens it." As I got up to close the door, she chuckled. "What's her name?" "It's Nettie. She's a girl." "Oh, I see." She leaned forward to look at Nettie and extended her index finger. In response, Nettie walked up to her, sniffed her finger, and then rubbed her head against the back of her hand. It's unusual for Nettie." "What do you mean?" she asked as she stroked Nettie's head. I told her that Nettie never warmed up to any woman other than my late wife, nor did she even approach them. My late wife used to say that Nettie was jealous, thinking I was having an affair. "Oh, so Nettie, do you think I'm not worth being jealous of because I'm just a woman like this?" As she and I exchanged smiles, Nettie passed under the chair where she was sitting and curled up under the couch by the window. That spot was Nettie's favorite. It was where my wife Jane used to sit, often taking naps with Nettie on her lap. Feeling reassured that I could leave Nettie in her care, I proceeded with my plan and set off on my journey to the hot spring inn. Looking out the train window at the passing scenery, I wondered how many years it had been since I'd last taken an overnight trip. Since then, 3 years, or was it 5 years ago? I flipped open my flip phone and spoke inwardly to the picture of Jane I had set as my wallpaper. "You see that? There's a line. Let's join in. They say the noodles here are delicious." That was on our way back from a 2-day trip to a hot spring in Lake Tahoe, which I drove to. From the moment we left the inn that morning, Jane was excited, constantly pointing out noodle shops. The more excited my wife got, the more my mood plummeted. To make matters worse, the roads were congested, and I grew grumpy for no reason. "So, we're stuck in traffic, and now we have to stand in line here. No thanks. If you want to eat it, go eat by yourself. I'll wait in the car." It was like a childish quarrel. Fine. If you don't want to eat, then I won't. Eating alone isn't fun at all. We didn't say a word to each other until we got home. I was wrong back then. In the evening, I arrived at the hot spring and I had reserved. That day, I soaked in the hot spring and ate the lavish dinner served by the inn. It wasn't as good as I expected. It's true, eating alone isn't fun. The next day, I went to see the lawn cherry blossoms that Jane had wanted to see. Red, white, pink, purple. The entire hillside was covered with beautiful lawn cherry blossoms. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I opened my phone and showed it to Jane in the picture. I felt as though I had finally accomplished something important, something I had left undone. The little over 30 years I spent with you, they flew by, and now it's going to be a long time. The day after, I finished my journey and returned home. I arrived at my house just after 4 p.m. Just then, the pet sitter Nova was there to feed Nettie, and they both greeted me. She returned the key to my house, stepped down to the entrance floor, and put on her shoes. "Take care, Nettie," she called out to Nettie, who was in the shadow of the showbox next to the entrance. I remembered the souvenir I had bought for her on my trip and said, "Wait a minute," and brought the paper bag with the souvenir from the living room where I had left my travel bag. She was very modest. "Please accept this. Thanks to you, I could travel with peace of mind." Is that so? Then, without any further ado, as we were doing this, Nettie descended to the entrance floor, ran ahead to the front door. "Do you want to go out to see Nova off? Shall we go to the gate then?" I put on my shoes and opened the door. Nettie was the first one out. Then her, and finally, me. I watched her ride home on her bike with Nettie, who was rubbing herself against the hem of my trousers. When I asked her how Nettie was doing while I was away immediately after I got back from my trip, she happily told me. When I came to feed her, Nettie was waiting for me, and she came to greet me at the door. However, the moment it was just the two of us, things changed. Sometimes, Nettie would get food from some cat lover when we were out, something that had been happening for a while. One evening, as I was watching the evening news on TV, I heard Nettie meowing from the kitchen. "Welcome back, I'm about to feed you." As I called out to her and walked to the kitchen, I served her food from a can on a plate, where she was sitting quietly. Yet, Nettie would just sniff the food with her nose up close and lick her paw pads without taking a bite, all the while stroking around her mouth, ears, and forehead. "Did you get fed somewhere again?" Nettie didn't respond but kept on stroking her face passionately. Then one evening, even when it was usually time for her to be home, there was no sign of Nettie coming back. I became anxious, wondering if she had had an accident, and went out to the gate calling for Nettie. But there was no response. Then my cell phone rang. "This is your pet sitter, Nova. Kenneth, Nettie is here at my place." "Nettie, at your place?" I explained that I was worried because Nettie was late coming home and had been searching for her outside the house. And I told her that I would pick up Nettie immediately. "It's okay, I'll bring Nettie over," she replied. After about 10 minutes of waiting at the gate, she arrived, waving from her bicycle. Nettie was comfortably lounging in the front basket of her bike. As I waved back at her, I was curious about Nettie. Nettie was usually afraid of women other than my wife, Jane. I invited her to my house for a cup of tea as a token of thanks, and she agreed to stay for a while. When I tried to lift Nettie out of the bicycle basket, she jumped out of my arms and quickly headed to the front door to wait for it to be opened. Even after entering the house, Nettie led us to the living room and curled up on the sofa where my wife often napped, with her front legs neatly aligned and her chin resting on them. I think it was after 5 o'clock. I was about to go shopping when I heard a cat meowing from the garden, she said. When she stretched her neck to see, she said, Nettie was in her front yard. I was so surprised. Nettie, isn't it Nettie? I called out. Then, Nettie went towards her, purring and rubbing her body against her legs. After talking about Nettie, we shared our own stories. She divorced about 10 years ago and was living alone in the house her late parents left her. She was living on the rental income from the apartments next to her house. She was doing pet sitting to earn some extra money because she had free time. I told her about losing my wife to a subarachnoid hemorrhage a year ago. I was completely dependent on my wife for household chores, and I can't cook at all, I said. How do you manage your meals every day? Well, you can have everything nowadays. I make do with ready-to-eat food from supermarkets and convenience stores. As I said that, she seemed to be considering something. Nettie seemed to be listening to our conversation while purring. Since that day, she started bringing me homemade meals packed in Tupperware whenever she could. Look, it's easier and more fun for me to cook for two than just for one, she would say. I thanked her and accepted her kindness. But there was one thing. Every time she brought me her homemade food, there was always "This is a treat for Nettie." I suddenly thought, am I being treated like Nettie? Am I just being fed like a cat? This continued for a month or so. Feeling guilty for always receiving her homemade meals, I occasionally bought fruits or some fancy sweets from the supermarket and gave them to her. Before we knew it, it was summer and the holiday was approaching. Since the beginning of August, Nettie had been coming home late again. That day, despite the thick rain clouds hanging in the sky since morning, a cool breeze made it a relatively comfortable day. Frustrated with Nettie not coming home even in the evening, I decided to visit her house for the first time, fearing the worst. That pesky Nettie, as I thought, she's here. Standing at the gate, my eyes wandered towards her front yard. There, seated on the porch, Nettie was contentedly on her lap. Just as I was about to press the doorbell, Nettie raised her head and turned to face me. Recognizing me, Nettie hopped off her lap, stretched her front paws out, made a big yawn, and then stood upright, arching her back and yawning again. After that, she slowly headed my way. Nova also noticed me. "Oh, Kenneth," scratching my head, I took a bow. Suddenly, large drops of rain started to fall. Nettie, instantly changing direction, rushed into the house. "Kenneth, it's raining. Please come inside." As she said, I opened the gate and ran under the eaves at the front door. The rain became a downpour, showing no sign of stopping anytime soon. She invited me to have dinner with her. Well then, I might be imposing, but I would be delighted to accept your kind offer. As I responded, she smiled sweetly and donned a light pink frilly apron. "Is this the kind of apron you'd find at some cafe?" Noticing my wide-eyed surprise, she bashfully explained that the apron was a birthday gift from a friend many years ago. "I didn't usually wear this sort of thing, so it's been put away for a long time. My regular apron has worn out. I live alone, nobody will see, and I didn't want to buy a new one, so I just dug this one out." With that, she turned back towards the kitchen, quickly tying up her long hair that had been down to her shoulders. From behind, I couldn't help but feel my heart skip a beat at the sight of her exposed nape. In the next moment, she let out a small gasp. Nettie had jumped onto the ties of her newly tied apron, undoing them. "Oh, you, such a cheeky girl." I faced her across the dining table. The dinner we shared was delicious. No, it wasn't just the two of us. Right next to us, Nettie was also having her meal. While eating, Nettie let out a series of satisfied purrs. Both of us turned our eyes and ears towards Nettie. And it sounded like Nettie was saying, "Delicious," while eating. We looked at each other and laughed. Nettie hadn't visited her house in quite a while, she explained. She was enjoying a quiet breeze while reading a book on the porch, mindful of the looming rain clouds. That's when Nettie made a casual appearance. Politely sitting down, as if to say, "Please let me stay here," she hopped onto her lap. After the rain stopped, I brought Nettie home. I went straight to the front of the home altar. There were some things I really wanted to report to my late wife, Jane. That I had dinner at Nova's place. How seeing the nape of her neck had set my heart racing. And most importantly, that Nettie had grown fond of her. While whispering such things in my heart and joining my hands in prayer in front of the altar, Nettie jumped onto my lap, rubbing her body against me and purring. When I looked at Nettie on my lap, she was looking up at my face. And she blinked slowly and quietly. I blinked back at her. And it seemed as if Nettie smiled. I looked at Nettie's face and the photo of my deceased wife, Jane, on the home altar. She's not a bad person. I felt as if I could hear Jane's voice just then. My beautiful childhood friend suddenly moved into my room. You might wonder why. My name is Adam Williams. I'm just an average single office worker. But right now, I'm doing my best raising a child. The 3-year-old girl is active and sometimes a handful. Every day I was flitting back and forth between work, daycare, and home. You might wonder why I, a single man, am raising a child, and there is a big reason for that. The 3-year-old I'm raising now is my niece, Hannah. Her mother is my sister. However, my sister and her husband died in a traffic accident 6 months ago. My parents are elderly and often in and out of the hospital due to poor health. I thought of turning to my brother-in-law's family, but it seems they were not on good terms, so I couldn't rely on them. But I felt bad putting her into an institution, so I decided to raise her myself. Luckily, I have a decent income and a good amount of savings as a single man. On top of that, my workplace is flexible with hours, and my boss, who is also raising a child, fully supports me. I was told I could take time off if something happened, and even if I couldn't work for a while, I had enough money to live on. But raising a child is not so easy. Hannah, now 3, is starting to learn words and talk about various things. But because she's still developing her language skills, there are times when she can't express her feelings well. And I am not used to raising kids. I cut back my work hours and left Hannah at my parents' home or daycare during that time, but honestly, it was not sustainable. While Hannah is usually quiet when she's at my parents' house or daycare, as soon as we get home, she starts creating chaos, shouting, "I want juice, I want to play." If I scold her while she's throwing a tantrum, it only makes things worse. In the beginning, I had determined to raise Hannah, but after taking her in for a few months, I'll be honest, I was feeling down. Every time Hannah cried, I felt like she was saying that she'd be better off with her real family, and I was feeling pressured. Seeing me like this, my parents decided to help. They sent a housekeeper to help me out. They suggested I should take a little break. They probably felt bad for putting so much burden on me, considering they were in and out of the hospital. The house was a mess, and there were many times when I felt I needed a woman's touch, I was really grateful for my parents' thoughtfulness. So, today, the housekeeper was supposed to come. She's from a home cleaning service. When I saw the housekeeper who arrived, I almost screamed. And Mary, Adam, we both nearly screamed in front of the entrance. Yes, the housekeeper who came today was my childhood friend. Her name is Mary. She used to live in my neighborhood, an incredibly beautiful girl, my first love. Mary was just so gorgeous in every way that there were many other boys who also had her as their first love. She had clear skin, beautiful long black hair, a figure that developed too well, and a calm smile. There's no way not to fall for her, and indeed she was extremely popular. By the time we were in the later grades of elementary school, there were love letters in her locker every day, and there was a legendary story about her receiving countless gifts on her birthday. When we got to middle school, the number of boys she turned down was countless, and I, who had been good friends with her since elementary school and often walked to school with her, was quite resented. But our relationship as good friends didn't last forever. Around middle school, she started being followed by a bad guy. Her parents decided they couldn't solve the problem and moved away with Mary when she graduated from middle school. We kept in touch for a while, but eventually we drifted apart, and that leads us to now. I'm surprised. I thought the name sounded familiar, but I didn't expect it to be you, Adam. No, I didn't expect you to be the one coming either. Apparently, Mary had received my information from the company, but now I'm not living at my parents' house, and this place is not near my childhood home. Moreover, Mary knew that I was pretty good at housework and used to help around the house, so she didn't think I'd need a housekeeping service. But once she saw the state of my house, Mary shrugged her shoulders. What happened here? The truth is, my sister passed away in a car accident, and I've taken it my niece. What? Mary used to come over to my house a lot when we were in elementary school. So she knew my sister and offered me condolences. I'm so sorry for your loss. Hearing those words makes me a bit sentimental. I was trying to raise her well, though I know I can't replace my sister, but I've got my hands full taking care of her, and as you can see, don't be so hard on yourself. This is your first time raising a kid. If you have time to feel down, spend it with your niece. After saying this, Mary started to get busy. She opened the windows to let in fresh air, quickly put the laundry I'd taken off into the washing machine, and started tackling the dishes pile. She was like a wizard. When I picked up Hannah from the daycare and came back home, the house was unrecognizably clean, which even surprised Hannah. Our house is so shiny. Mary's work should be finished by the evening. I figured she would have left while I was at the daycare picking up Hannah. I felt I should have thanked her for her amazing work, and just as I thought that, "Oh, welcome back." From the kitchen, Mary poked her head out. She was wearing an apron, and her appearance was that of a typical wife. "Wait, Mary, weren't you done for the day?" "Yeah, I was, but I just couldn't leave it like this. Oh, here's your key." I had left my key with Mary and asked her to leave it in my mailbox when she was finished. I didn't want to keep Mary until the time I picked up Hannah, but it seems like she stayed anyway, after notifying her company that she'd be going straight home. "Nice to meet you, Hannah. I'm sorry to bother you at home. My name is Mary. You must be surprised, right?" Mary squatted down to say hello to Hannah, but Hannah, perhaps a bit shy, clung tightly to my leg. Seeing this, Mary smiled and said, "It's a bit intimidating, isn't it?" and then looked at me. "Come on, wash your hands and gargle. I made dinner, so let's fill your tummy first." "But, aren't you off work?" "Yeah, I'm done, but I just wanted to help out personally. I hope you don't mind." Mary looked up at me, her head cocked to one side, and honestly, I couldn't resist her charm. In fact, I was quite pleased. I have joked about wanting to try Mary's cooking before I left to pick up Hannah, and it seems she had heard me. Of course, I can cook too, but there are times when you just want to eat someone else's homemade food. So, I decided to let myself enjoy Mary's hospitality today. Hannah was initially nervous, but the moment she tasted Mary's hamburger, she said, "Delicious, better than yours, Uncle," and was wolfing it down. In no time at all, she warmed up to Mary. It's a hard pill to swallow, but Mary's burger is dozens of times better than mine. I wonder how she manages to make such a juicy and fluffy hamburger. And she even shaped the burger into a bear to make it appealing to children. Seeing Hannah's delighted face, even though I felt a bit frustrated, it must have shown on my face. Since you, Adam, have been taking care of Hannah, I was able to focus on the cooking. That's why it's only natural that my cooking is better than yours. She said something like that. At that moment, I felt my heart, which had always been half-hearted about childcare, suddenly lighten. It's always like this. Mary knows just the right words to say when you need them. When I lost a fight in elementary school and was feeling down, Mary would comfort me, saying, "Is it really amazing to win a fight? I don't think so. You're just fine as you are, Adam." And when it looked like I wouldn't get into the college I wanted, she gently pushed me forward, saying, "It's not the end of the world if you don't get into that school. You'll have other opportunities at other schools, and if you stress too much, you might fail to seize even those you could have." Thanks to her, the pressure eased, and I was able to successfully pass the exam. But Mary moved away, and I haven't been able to return the favor. I was thinking about this while I was putting Hannah to bed. I'm a grown man, and I really wanted to do something to repay her. But I've spent a long time apart from Mary, and honestly, I didn't know what she would want. So I asked Mary, "Hey, Mary, I want to thank you for everything you did today. Is there anything you want?" When I suddenly said that, Mary looked surprised with wide eyes. What's with you all of a sudden?" "No, it's not sudden. I've been helped by you since the old days, Mary. I just want to return the favor." "That's a bit too much." Mary tried to laugh it off, but seeing my serious gaze, she coughed a little in embarrassment. "Well, if you insist, there is something I want." "Really? What is it?" "I can't promise anything, but I'll try to get it for you." "Well, a spare key to your place." What? Mary looked straight into my eyes, without making a joke. "Well, without me around, Adam, I think you'll mess up the room in no time." Also, I'm worried about Hannah. Girls grow up so fast. Even you sometimes make comments that lack delicacy, so I want to stick around for a while." Saying that, Mary extended her hand. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. It will be convenient for me, and I'll be happy to have access to your house." Mary gifted me with a warm smile, so I handed her the spare key. Since then, my life has changed dramatically. In the beginning, Mary would come over in between her housekeeping service jobs, but that was just at first. Lately, she's started staying over at my place, claiming that it's too much trouble to go home. Living under the same roof with the woman I once adored. It's a wonderful thing. But the reality is, with a 3-year-old girl in the house, there's no time to dwell in such moods. Thanks to Mary taking over the housework, I can spend time with Hannah, and Hannah returns home having learned a lot at her daycare. If I take my eye off her for even a moment, I'd surely be left behind her growth. So, I was happy that I could properly look after Hannah, and Hannah too has seen changes. She must have associated Mary with her mom. Hannah started to become more dependent on Mary, and she stopped throwing tantrums. Even if Mary isn't her mother, the presence of a woman who is there to protect her must have comforted Hannah. Before we knew it, neither Hannah nor I could imagine a life without Mary. We started going out together, playing together, just like any normal family. It was about time to be a real man. I started thinking about marrying Mary and wishing that we could stay together forever. But what about Mary? Well, she's done so much for us. I wanted to believe she feels the same way. But this is not something I can rush into. With that thought, I hesitated. Can anyone blame me? I didn't want to ruin this relationship. But all things have an end, and that day came suddenly. Actually, I was married before. It was when Hannah was asleep, and we were enjoying a quiet drink. Perhaps buoyed by the alcohol, Mary dropped this bombshell out of the blue. What? I was so surprised that I involuntarily screamed out loud. I hurriedly clamped my mouth shut and looked at the bedroom, but Hannah hadn't woken up. Feeling relieved about that, I listened to the rest of Mary's story. I thought, this guy seems nice, I could marry him, but turned out he was a huge narcissist. He only kept me around because I was pretty, and he demanded I make an effort to stay beautiful. Can you believe that? Mary was unusually venting as she said so. Despite her beauty, Mary was always sought after for her looks. Whenever Mary did anything even slightly ungirly, they all left her. It's so much easier with you, Adam. You don't complain if I don't drink cute cocktails or comment on the design of my pajamas. That's just because your taste is so terrible. I've given up commenting on it. What did you say? While exclaiming, Mary puckered her lips and guzzled her beer in a robust manner. She always drinks like this, but today she was even faster and more masculine. By the way, the pajamas she's wearing today have a rather unique design, featuring a character depicted as a teacup with arms and legs, sitting on heels. I wondered why Mary chose it, but Hannah found it very good. I didn't understand it, and I'm not one to comment on Mary's clothes, but if a woman differed from their ideal, some men would point it out or even enforce their ideals. That must be quite stifling. So, thank you, Adam. For always accepting me. I should have married you. I wonder why I ever let you go. With that, Mary slumped over the table. I thought it was her way of hiding her embarrassment, but I was wrong. Mary had fallen asleep right then and there. Sheesh, you've had too much to drink tonight. I carried Mary to bed. In her own way, Mary must have struggled. All that struggle just spilled out a little. It's just because of the alcohol. This isn't Mary's true feelings. Besides, she just mentioned she's been divorced. She's probably trying to tell me she's not thinking about getting married again, but if she does want to get married, she'd want it to be with me. I just don't know anymore. I seriously pondered what Mary had said, but I still couldn't find the answer. So, the following evening, without a nightcap, I asked Mary. I figured I had to ask. Mary, do you want to marry me? What? Caught off guard by my question, Mary's gaze wanders. A little flustered, she stammers out, I'm sorry. I said something weird yesterday, didn't I? I get it. You have Hannah, and you're not thinking about marriage, right? We've been friends since we were kids, so we couldn't possibly see each other that way. And yet, I said something like that yesterday. Wait a minute. I want to marry you, Mary. I grab Mary's arm as she panics, staring at her intently. Then Mary looks at me with wide eyes. Mary, me, you do that. That's why I'm having this conversation. Geez, you always understand others so well, but when it comes to yourself, you're so slow. Really, no way, yay. Mary hugged me, careful not to wake up Hannah with her excitement. I was surprised, but I stroked her head. Mary cared about me too, but she held herself back, seeing me struggle with raising Hannah, figuring I didn't need more on my plate. In other words, the two of us, together, couldn't take that important step. It's pathetic for adults like us, But maybe this is the result of being too considerate because we care about each other so much. But Mary, are you really ready to get married? Usually, people are more careful about this kind of thing. I'm ready in my heart. Saying this with a smile, Mary stepped back from me. She then took something out of her bag and held it out in front of me. When she unfolded it, it's a marriage certificate. When did you get this? You remember how I told you yesterday that I was divorced? That made me want to show my commitment. So, I picked this up today. Mary said this with a shy smile. Despite all the talk, I was determined to properly convey my feelings to Mary, who had prepared so well. I love you, Mary. I love you too, Adam. And with that, we both broke into laughter. Not long after, Mary and I got married. It's what you'd call a zero-dating courtship marriage. We were practically dating, but we had never been on an official date or anything like that. So, since we'd get married in that state, we were very conscious of each other's situation and very nervous about each other. Well, we were happy to be in that mix of beginning a relationship and a honeymoon period. You get what I mean, right? Despite all this, we didn't have a wedding ceremony. There's Hannah to think about after all. Besides, we thought our apartment was too small, so we bought a house, which meant we couldn't afford a wedding. Once we got the house and bought a car, Hannah, before we knew it, was 6 years old and had grown into a grade schooler. With our marriage, we officially adopted Hannah and we became a legal family. Now, hearing her call us Dad, Mom, brings us so much joy. And our family isn't just Hannah. There's a new addition on the way, in Mary's belly, our child, who will be Hannah's little brother or sister. Even though Mary's not showing much yet, Hannah has already started helping out around the house, perhaps in the spirit of being a big sister. Mary always said that girls grow up fast. She wasn't kidding. But there's always laughter around us. We're happier now than I could have ever imagined when it was just Hannah and me, and I am fiercely determined to protect this life at all costs. For Hannah, for Mary, for the child who's on the way, I've resolved to do my very best. How did you find it? Your subscription to the channel motivates us to create more content. Let's meet again in the next video. Under the table, the sensation of her poking fingers made my heart flutter. With a bit of alcohol, her expression was more alluring than usual. "Are you holding back anything?" she asked. I could only utter monosyllabic responses like "oh" or "no." Then, with a smile, she suggested, "Why not let everything go? That'll be good for you. Let yourself free, okay? Can a man resist when such words are spoken by a woman he's smitten with?" I couldn't. I decided to bare my all to her. Yes, she had completely stripped me bare. My name is Jen Mason, a mediocre 35-year-old office worker. My only hobby is scuba diving. Scuba diving is great. I don't have other hobbies, nor friends. The beauty of the sea makes you forget all the stress. As long as I can communicate with my buddy, I don't have to talk to anyone else. The area where I currently work is famous for marine sports. The sea where I usually dive is nearby, and having all the necessary equipment makes fun dives surprisingly affordable for me. I had reasons to come to this place, but I was grateful that I could devote my time to the hobby. As usual, I came to dive on my days off. The boat is always handled by a guy from a familiar diving shop. He knows many good diving spots, so I always leave it up for him where we go. He isn't very friendly, but I'm not one for small talk, so it's fine. One day, while enjoying a dive from his boat, I spotted a woman when I returned to the dock. She seemed to have just returned from diving as well. It's not uncommon to run into other divers after finishing my own dive. But I couldn't take my eyes off her. Once I saw her, I was captivated by her sheer beauty. My eyes first landed on her glistening, water-drenched hair. Next, I found myself entranced by her body. Although I knew it was wrong, I couldn't help but gaze at her attractive figure, accentuated by her diving suit. I think it was love at first sight for me. But I didn't have the courage to walk up to her. After all, an average guy like me wouldn't stand a chance with a beauty like her. All I could do was watch her from afar. However, I was soon able to see her again, at my workplace of all places. I work for a large trading company, but I'm not stationed at the head office. I commute to a food processing plant every day. I used to be at the head office, but I've been working at this plant for the past 2 years. My job is to oversee the workers here. There are many foreign workers, and communication can be challenging, but I think I'm doing well. Well, I call it overseeing, but it's more like being an office worker with a mix of miscellaneous duties. I came to this plant 2 years ago and haven't told my colleagues about my previous department or my educational background. I have bitter memories, so I keep quiet about it. Of course, my boss, Matt, knows, but thanks to his consideration, he keeps it quiet. At first, my secretive nature prompted many questions from everyone, but I never gave any real answers and reacted coldly. Now, no one talks to me about anything other than work. I do my job, but my days are lonely. Yet in the midst of these days, the day of our reunion arrived. I'm Abby White from the head office. I'll be here for just 3 months, but I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thus introduced the woman who came to learn about the work at this plant from the head office for a limited period of 3 months, Abby White. She's the same age as me, and so beautiful. She's highly regarded in the head office, and a pan-comer they say. After I left, she was headhunted from a rival company and came to ours, a true elite. She is also the woman I fell in love with at first sight after diving. She looked stunning in her diving wetsuit, but in a business suit, she exuded a strong, professional vibe, which was equally impressive. She wore suits that fit her body stylishly. For her, it was only a 3-month stint at our plant, but she went all out. If there was anything she didn't understand, she'd ask. She also actively engaged in communication with the plant workers. She looked dazzling to my eyes. For someone like me who's lost his passion for work and is isolated at workplace. There was a time when I was passionate about my work, too. I can't help but laugh at my jaded self. One day, a fight broke out among the foreign workers at the plant. It started off as an argument between 2 people, but by the time we the supervisors rushed to the scene, more than 10 people were already embroiled in the dispute. Our company actively hires foreign workers, so the nationalities are diverse. Normally, communication is conducted primarily in English and Spanish, but this time it seems to have heated up considerably. At first, they argued in their usual languages, but they soon began cursing each other in their native tongues. Probably, the fact that they didn't understand each other only exacerbated their anger. The first to step in was Abby. She tried to persuade them in English and Spanish, but they seemed to be in no mood to listen. It looked like a physical fight was about to break out between them, so I hurriedly stepped in as well. After getting Abby to step back, I called out to a few guys who were causing the most trouble. Fortunately, the center of the dispute was between a Chinese and a Vietnamese worker. I happened to speak both languages. Thinking their native languages would resonate more with them in their heated state, I listened to their grievances in Vietnamese and Chinese. The workers, who were surprised at me for speaking both languages, started to listen to what I had to say. The whole incident seemed to be a small misunderstanding, but upon listening, it became clear that the foreign workers had their own concerns. Perhaps they were frustrated because they couldn't convey their feelings well in English. I continued to listen to the workers' opinions while interpreting it for my boss, Matt. We couldn't incorporate all their opinions, but I think we were able to find a good compromise. Sometimes, when Matt was at a loss for a response, I even proposed a solution. When everything was resolved, Matt expressed his gratitude to me quite a bit. "Well, Jan, you're a real standout. The elite really is different." I quickly shushed Matt, who was praising me like that. "Could you please make this a case handled and resolved by you, boss?" I got it. Matt answered cheerfully. "I can speak Spanish, Chinese, and a little Vietnamese. But I absolutely don't want everyone to know that. I'd rather be seen as a guy who's not very useful." The hardest person to deceive was Abby, because I had spoken multiple languages in front of her. As expected, after the issue was resolved, Abby bombarded me with questions. "That's amazing that you can speak so many languages. Did you study abroad, or did you learn it for work?" I laughed it off. "Well, haha, that's embarrassing. Please forget about it. It was just a coincidence that I could speak those languages. I'm just an ordinary, impressive employee." Abby seemed to have more to say, but when I avoided the conversation and left the scene, she didn't say anything else afterwards. She might have understood my desire not to be scrutinized. About a month after the workers' quarrel, the company's end-of-year party was held. I often decline invitations to parties, but I always make a point to attend the end-of-year party. As the party progressed and people got a bit tipsy, Abby came to sit next to me. Abby will be returning to the head office after the new year. It'd be only a little while where I can see her beautiful self. I was feeling a bit sad. Then, something touched my leg under the table. It was Abby, playfully nudging my leg. What? I was a little taken aback and tried to ask her what was going on, but Abby put her finger to her lips and said, "Shh. You're hiding something, aren't you? You're actually really competent, right?" Her words took me by surprise. "That's not true at all. You don't have to hide it. Why don't you let it all out? Clear the air, don't you think?" Though her tone was light and it sounded like she was joking, her eyes were serious. So I nodded to Abby's words and we snuck out of the end-of-year party together. We found a quiet bar where we could relax and ordered some drinks. Then I slowly began to speak. "Do you mind listening to my pathetic story?" "No, not at all. I approached you because I wanted to hear your story. I used to work at the head office. I can speak several languages. I'm good at negotiating, and I even received a notice of promotion to manager." Upon hearing my words, Abby's eyes sparkled. "Manager at the head office, at your age, that's amazing. But then, how come you sent off this far?" My wife cheated on me. I came home early as a surprise on our wedding anniversary, and there was another man. She didn't even try to justify or apologize. She just demanded a divorce. She told me, "It's your fault for neglecting me. I want someone who stays by my side. You just graduated from a good university and have a high-paying job. That's it." Abby slammed the bar table with a bang. "That's horrible. Unforgivable." I laughed at her words. "No, the horrible one is me." What she said was true. I was always working. I didn't even care about my wife's birthday or our anniversaries. I was really the worst. That day, I just happened to remember our anniversary. It seemed like she also wanted children and was struggling with infertility. However, I wasn't concerned about that at all. I was immersed in my work and things were going well, so I lightly thought it would be nice if we could have children someday. She was also worried about having children. but I was rarely at home and always focused on my work. I left my wife feeling lonely. Moreover, I didn't even realize that she was feeling lonely. What an idiot I am. I started not caring about which word to use, as I got carried away with my story, but it seemed okay given the circumstances. After the divorce, I couldn't forgive my past self. It's true that I enjoyed working, but my wife was more important than that. In the beginning, she was also happy to see me working hard. I wanted to make her happy, and that's why we got married, but I couldn't cherish her at all. I couldn't get the words, "You're just a man with good education and high salary," out of my mind. I started to believe that I was no good as a person. That made me lose my motivation for work and my personal life. I couldn't eat, and both my mind and body were falling apart. I fell into depression, and I eventually submitted my resignation. But there was someone who stopped me. It was my boss at that time, a man named John. "Take some time off. Maybe there are things you should reflect on in your personal life, but I value your capabilities. Once you've recovered, come back." He said such encouraging words to me. I love diving, and knowing that, John suggested that I recuperate while working in a plant near the sea. "That's how I ended up being here," I said. She remained silent for a while, as if she was thinking about something. After a while, she asked, "I understand why you transferred here, but why do you keep it a secret about your educational background and your time at the headquarters and isolating from everybody? Why do you hide it, Jan?" I put too much importance on my educational and work history and ended up hurting my wife. I was so fixated on these things, but I couldn't even make the person closest to me happy. After I separated from my wife, I lost all motivation, and I also lost my passion for work. I don't care about my educational background or work history anymore. Abby quickly downed the drink in her glass. Then she started yelling, "You've got to be kidding me." Her outburst made both me and the bartender flinch. "Quit wallowing. No matter what the reason, infidelity is wrong. You might have been inconsiderate, and maybe you didn't understand women, but your wife should have spoken up too. She didn't say anything to you beforehand, did she?" I nodded in response to her fiery lecture. "This is a marital problem between the two of you. It's not entirely your fault. It's also strange that your wife expected you to understand without saying anything. This does not justify having an affair." Her assertive response left me speechless. "It's foolish of you to feel responsible for the outcome of your marriage, fall sick, and come to a standstill. Pull yourself together." I received a lengthy lecture from Abby after that. "Your boss asked you to come back, didn't he? That's not a common kind of boss, you know. I understand you took a medical leave, but you're better now, aren't you? You're just relaxing and diving here. Is that what you want? Well, I love diving too, but we can still go diving when we relocate close to the headquarters, right?" I was reminded of the gentle and dependable face of my boss John. Even after 2 years, John would invite me for drinks and keep in touch. Without showing any disappointment at my depressed state, he patiently waited for my return. "If you are capable, you should return to the headquarters. The plant isn't the place for your talents. I'm not sure if you can return with all this moping though. I'm going to the headquarters first. I'll work hard and climb the ladder." Abby shone brightly as she spoke. "I like you." "Yes, I do," I unintentionally murmured. Though I regretted it, I couldn't take back my words. Abby blushed instantly. "What are you saying out of the blue? We were talking about work. I'm not interested in dating anyone right now. I'm focused solely on work. But well, I was impressed by you when the dispute happened, so I might consider it if you return to the headquarters and start over again." I had braced myself for a hard rejection, but it seemed I'd managed to dodge that bullet. Whether or not my feelings would reach her depended on my actions from here on out. "I'll give it my all," I said. At those words, Abby showed the brightest smile I'd ever seen on her. Soon after the new year, she returned to the headquarters. Later, I contacted John and spent a year making my way back to the headquarters. Finally, I came back to my former office. Upon seeing me, Abby narrowed her eyes and gave me a warm smile. After our reunion at the company, I invited her out for dinner. You made a speedy recovery. I worked really hard. Remember our deal? Of course, I've been waiting all this while. Tears welled up in her eyes as she spoke. I like you a lot. Can you stay by my side? She nodded with a smile. Yes, you can be a bit of a wimp sometimes. I'll have to keep you in line. Our relationship progressed smoothly from there, and we eventually got married. Now, Abby Wyatt is not only my wonderful wife, but also a fierce rival at work who pushes me to do my best.